I've got some special guests with me today. I have Gregory Frye, VP of Operations from Stonehenge Health. And I also have Marc Messer, Marketing Director of Advanced Bionutritionals. Welcome, fellas. Thanks for being with us today.
Thank you.
Happy to be here.
Shout out to your outfits. They're perfect for Vegas.
I did a licensing deal with the Cosmos, so they're going to be swapping all these carpets out. It'll be good.
I love it. I love it. Maybe you guys can just do a quick introduction. Give the room the 411 on how you got to ShipBob, what companies you're from, what products you work with, and just a little bit more about your journey in fulfillment.
Sure.
Yeah, sure. So, Gregory, hello, welcome. And working with ShipBob has been amazing, and it was a real juxtaposition to where we came from, which was a previous fulfillment company that was not amazing. So the contrast was stark. But I've been working with Stonehenge Health now for just shy of 9 years, and started before the company started, and really helped build the company and start with the CEO and founder. And it's a privately held company that is fully bootstrapped, and so we're only looking at ways to optimize that and be profitable is always the main focus. So it's super important that everything we do be profitable as it goes, and so that's been very interesting. But speaking with fulfillment specifically, right? So we were in to the I think Mike's point earlier about being in San Diego or close to the border there and fulfilling to the U.S. from San Diego. It's like the worst possible spot in the U.S. pretty much you could fulfill from, and that's where we were fulfilling from for 8 years from San Diego, and so. Geographically not ideal, and so moving to ShipBob and being able to be more centrally located first in North Aurora and then being in IPP as well with being able to have multiple locations has been awesome, and how easy that is to have multiple locations and move the inventory around. Plus just the cost savings. The previous company was not able to do rate shopping at all, and rate shopping, of course, does make the cost go down, and that's huge. We were just using USPS before because that was the only choice. We could use FedEx, UPS, or USPS and pick one. So that's not ideal. Of course, rate shopping helps significantly, and then all the interesting carriers that local carriers, and it really can fine-tune the exact using AI, I'm sure, to find the right carrier, right, has been amazing to reduce costs. We did a case study with ShipBob. We really did save $1 million in a year using ShipBob instead. And the CEO was like not believing it when I was pitching this. I've done all the math multiple times. We really are going to save $1 million a year if we use ShipBob instead. And he was very excited, as you might be. And so, yeah, it really did happen, though. And so it's been going super well as we've grown. ShipBob has been there to support us, and again, the juxtaposition between the two has been stark. So it really was the right move. But yeah.
That's great. That's great. Marc, how about you?
My journey was a little bit similar to Gregory's here. I've actually been working with SoundView for 18 years now. Prior to that, I was at a consulting firm at 110 clients in 85 different verticals. So there's a few I haven't worked in, but love what we're doing, and we're kind of one of the dinosaurs in the room. So the company was started in the 80s, so we've been actually shipping our own stuff prior to ShipBob. Being in Atlanta, we were a little bit more centrally located. We actually tried to go to a 3PL, one of your competitors, I actually know the owner, in 2018, I want to say 2019, before COVID, and it just wasn't the right fit. The tech stack wasn't right. We own all of our tech. We own our entire tech stack. And when we started the process again, after we got through COVID and things like that, similar, our operations director did a whole cost analysis, and we were able to save money by moving to ShipBob, and we're in several different warehouses, and yeah, it's been great.
I love it. I love when the ROI analysis actually play out to how you anticipate them to. Well, let's get into, I know we want to talk about the category. I know we want to spend a little bit of time on operations. Of course, we're going to get into AI, and then we'll spend a little bit of time. I've got some surprise lightning round questions that we'll get to at the end. So let's get into the category. Health and wellness customers are different from most e-com buyers. They're often on subscriptions, and they're deeply loyal and very sensitive to anything going wrong with their order. So maybe you guys can speak a little bit about what that means for how you think about fulfillment and how you manage through some of those nuances. Want to start with you, Marc?
Yeah. So I think somebody earlier said, what's the number one question you get? Where is my shipment? And for us, we have an older audience, so I think health and wellness skews older, or tends to anyway. We are on the extreme end of that. So I think we probably still have 15 or 20% of our orders come by check, mailed in. So it's that level of, technology savvy. So one of the things we are working on, and hopefully we'll get TrackBob soon. We're not on Shopify, so we're one of the few that, like I said, own our tech stack. But that's one thing that we've really put emphasis on in the last year. I was able to work with Gorgeous, which I know is a partner of ShipBob, and pull our tech stack immediately into that. So our customer service agents now can see everything from ShipBob through our e-com platform, all in one place. And so that was kind of some early AI stuff we were doing last year. But yeah, I think, I sleep good at night. I know we're making excellent products. We just got to get them there, and ShipBob definitely helps with that.
That's great.
Yeah, subscriptions, is a huge part of our business. About 68% of the business is subscription. Similar older demographic. Phone orders is a big part of that. So how to deal with phone orders through a PCI compliant way and Shopify. That's like a friction point that is hard to deal with. We're still using our old tech for the phone order part where people really want to place a phone order. We try and push them through Shopify as much as we can, but subscriptions is a huge part of our business. And so, it's building that relationship. Obviously, once you have a subscriber, you want to keep them. And so how does fulfillment, go along with that? I will say that having the multiple locations and getting the product out to customers fast consistently is super important. And you've built that relationship. You want to keep the relationship going with the subscription. So making sure that they're getting their product on time when they're expecting it, that there aren't issues or delays, lost orders, all of those sorts of things. ShipBob has been great with the vast majority of that. It's nothing's perfect in life, right? There's always going to be little hiccups. So the support that comes along with that obviously is super critical. Having our amazing Larkin, our CSM, who's super supportive on our side, fighting for us, has been amazing as well. So getting the support of the team, and pretty much everyone I've talked to at ShipBob is amazing. So super nice. I'm like the perfect spokesperson for ShipBob, basically. But I really do love the company. It's such a great company, and the people that work at the company are all super helpful. So working on improving. So I'm all about giving feedback. Went to the feedback sessions yesterday. Love giving feedback, and so working on how to make it better is always the thing. So the fact that you're receptive to feedback too, that was again juxtaposition to the previous company we were working with that basically couldn't do nothing that we wanted. It was pretty much like, this is what it is, take it or leave it. ShipBob is not that. So yeah, it's been interesting to see the evolution of what we can do, and certainly trying to use as many technologies as possible. I'm all about technology, so looking to the future, we're going to talk about AI, but looking ahead, like what's next? How can we incorporate the latest, greatest technology into whatever we're doing next? And that goes along with subscriptions and rebills and the retention of those, and all of the the emails and automations, and using SMS in that as well. So being able to instead of cancel, can you skip or postpone? Right, so there's so many elements of that can incorporate both AI and just being able to be there with the customer and what they need that is critical to the experience for them to stay long term. And of course, delivering a great product is important too. So we have amazing formulas that our product development team has created. So having strong formulas is of course the core of that. I'm always thinking about technology, so I'm not as much in the supplement formulation part of the business, but we have great formulas. So that's going to help of course with retention too. So delivering great products.
I'm the opposite. I'm the fussy tailor of the group, so I'm constantly tinkering with formulas. One of the interesting things is we actually don't have a ton of subscriptions. We have a 70% reorder rate without subscriptions. So yeah, efficacy of the product, number one.
That's right. And Gregory, fulfillment is hard. I'm glad you feel supported by the team. That's great to hear. We're going to get to AI in just a minute, but before we do that, I want to talk a little bit about the fact that wellness trends can move fast. A doctor's reco, a viral health claim, a podcast mention can spike demand overnight. And so I'm curious, how do both of you stay ahead of demand, and what does a demand spike actually do to your fulfillment operation? How do you think about that? How do you stay in front of it? You want to start, Marc?
Well, my purchasing director's here, Christy. Shout out to her. She mostly keeps me sane through it, but we've had some explosive growth over the years. Excluding the COVID bump, of course, When we launch a product, we work closely with our formulators, our doctors on staff, and we never know how it's going to land. Some of our best products actually don't sell as well as I would have expected. Sometimes they're too complicated to explain, and then some of the simpler products sell well. The other thing is, it's kind of cyclical. So what's old is new again. So millennials, I think, are the first generation that are like buying prevention. And so things like magnesium, L-citrulline, theanine, just single ingredients, which we were like selling 30 years ago. It's like, oh, well, now we need to bring that back as a single ingredient item instead of it being part of a stack, because people that are like buying into those products now, they don't even know they can start stacking them yet. And with peptides and stuff, it's kind of putting a different emphasis on the market if you're trying to go really deep into it. So I think as we move here into this, the latter half of this decade, I really do think that trying to bring customers in on like a single ingredient and then saying, hey, you're already buying this, but when you stack it with this, it's going to probably be a good way to grow the business. I think a lot of people know Amazon's not really creating new customers anymore in the US especially. So now it's more about grabbing market share of the Amazon customers, right? And I think they got 88%, I think, of the US, and then Walmart like gets the rest in the rural areas. So, as we kind of look at that, it's like, okay, maybe we need to dial our formulas back a bit, which will probably help margins. But it's primarily to acquire new customers. And those trends, something go viral on TikTok tomorrow. I think Shilajit went like pretty viral last year, and it's like, should we do a product? Well, it died. And so it's like, okay, and it takes a while to formulate products. It's not quick.
Yeah,
So.
This concept of what's old is new again is really interesting. Do you think that it's because there's access to so much more data? Like I think about my Oura Ring, and I think about I've got all this access to information, and so I can target and pinpoint the things that are ailing me, and therefore I know I need this one ingredient or that one. Do you think that's driving that trend, or?
I do. Right now, most of the frontier models, maybe not Grok, are very cautious of providing medical advice or providing health information. I do think in the next 2 years that's going to change a lot. And one of the things I was worried about, let's say 5 years ago, was personalized supplements, right? But it's very complicated to do that, like to have like this perfect stack for this one person. I do think though with AI, customers are going to be able to figure out how to do that. And Google's doing a program right now where you can shop inside of like Google Card from multiple stores as one order. It's very technical to get into that beta, but I do think customers are going to be moving that way. I don't know if our audience is, because we're on the older end of the spectrum, but I definitely think younger buyers are going to be like, okay, I'm having this issue with my health. Can I start working on supplements before I go to the extreme of like, a procedure or some kind of other medical operation? And I think it's going to be able to basically say, take this, 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 and this, and you're going to click a button, and it's going to order from all those different vendors, and you're going to want to make sure that you are the premier, leading, most premium product out there, or most cost-effective, because it's probably going to be the two ends, right? Everything in the middle is going to get lost.
Yeah, that makes sense. Gregory, what are your thoughts on this?
Yeah, it's going to be interesting, right? So staying in, we're unfortunately just starting our focus on GEO now, right? And how to get into the search engine result, right? The Google's click rate is like 60% no click, right? So where it used to be 40 and then 50, and now 60% of people that search on Google are not clicking on anything. They're just taking whatever it says. So if you're not in the result of what Google says, you're not going to get anything basically from that customer, right? So we've been heavily focused on direct response search for a long time. And so how to continue that into the future, right, with AI and getting the answers. So there's a lot of becoming the knowledge leader basically that you have to do both on your site and across other platforms, right? Making sure that places like Trustpilot and for us like HealthMD and those sort of all the websites basically that relate to health that are not your own websites, third-party sites that have information about you, and and then of course making good products that actually help people, so that then the customer feedback is of course good as well as super important. So it's going to be a combination of all of those things basically, getting out there and then seeing the the sort of the agentic search of what's happening with the result in ChatGPT or Claude when somebody's asking about whatever it is, their health, specifically or generally, like what is it recommending and why, and making sure that we're in there, right? So that is going to be a huge challenge for everyone. And what makes you stand out, basically. So it's going to be an interesting future. But yeah.
I will say we started as a publishing company. So at one point, I think we probably had 5 or 6 different even health publications with different doctors. And so we've got a ton of copy written on these ingredients, stacks, health protocols, but just getting it out there so that the LLMs can find it. I'm talking, we've got stuff in file boxes that's not even in a PDF form that we've got to get scanned in. So I'm looking forward to going through all that, and of course, organizing it a lot easier, but it's definitely going to be a challenge. Yeah, that's what we use our warehouse now for, storing stuff like that.
So this is a good segue into marketing specifically, and so I'm curious. I know, Marc, you run marketing for your organization, but how do you connect your marketing to your fulfillment and your operations? And when those sides work together well at your brands, what does it look like? How do you measure success? Can you guys speak about that?
Yeah, so for us, we use NetSuite on our back end, so it's like our source of truth on financials. And probably the number one metric I look at every day to know like how a certain product moving is units sold, right? So that's like a source of truth on fulfillment. And the way NetSuite works is we don't capture on credit cards until after we ship. So, and 95% of our orders are D2C from ShipBob. So waiting for those ShipBob to confirm the scanning and to issue the tracking codes, that's always the fun time of the day to see, okay, what do we actually get out there? And for us, narrowing that gap down. So I've actually, over the last year, worked with our controller and our CFO to actually put in like our marketing costs into NetSuite as like an estimate of what the spend is going to be. Obviously, Meta, all these different platforms, we could pull it in automatically, but by having it a little bit manual, it's almost like you're journaling. And so even me, I'll go through and look at those numbers, and if something looks off, it's like I can pivot in real time and adjust the marketing. Or as something's scaling, and I'm sitting here, I'm in Las Vegas, I travel quite a bit, I go to a lot of conferences. All of a sudden I'll get a note from Christy or Diamond and they go, hey, we don't have any more inventory for that. Can you just shut that off? And I'm like, oh yeah,
it's important.
Real quick.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
And AI is gonna help us to get better. I'm working on a tool right now. I'm building a tool for our purchasing director that's gonna be able to do forecasting with custom built marketing models in there. For not only seasonal, but like we do a lot of direct mail still, but like that's like a one-time drop that's gonna burn down X amount of units of a product, and Christy has to do the ordering anyway for like the direct mail. So it's like, well, when you're ordering the package, put it in the system at the same time. Those units, even if we've got another incoming supply, or a resupply, there could be ordering delays. Right now, customs sometimes delay stuff. So yeah, so as we tighten all that up, it's like from marketing all the way to fulfillment, I've got it down to less than 24 hours from the time I spend $1 to the time I know I got that $1.01 back.
That's amazing. Gregory, where are you guys at in that journey of marketing to ops and that connection?
Yeah, we have a lot of meetings, but basically about this very topic, right? So weekly meetings, but using we've always been a very data-driven company. The CEO very much loves Excel, and how can we use Excel? So making sure people obviously are great at Excel is how, but obviously with the advance of technology here with AI2, being able to pull all that together in a more automated way. So first Excel, then we went to Power BI and bringing all the data into Power BI. So pretty much everything in every source basically all comes and lives in Power BI together now. So we have a team of people that are specifically just doing that all the time. So how can we make new dashboards and bring all of that source of truth into Power BI? And so, then obviously monitoring it is super important. But we don't have a ton of crazy spikes, I would say, in our business. It's fairly consistent, and with subscription, and we're not really pushing. We're not on TikTok. We're not really pushing viral moments as much. We're trying to be just sort of the consistent brand every day use. So that's been a big part of it. So we can sort of forecast a little bit easier because of that, obviously. So but then making sure that the marketing teams are talking to the fulfillment and the sourcing teams and the products are going to be there and aligned for whatever the plan is coming from marketing, and then of course launching new products and the rollouts and trying to figure out the quantities of inventory that go along with that. So yeah, it's always a challenge, but it's fun.
And data is going to be even more important, right? So as we move more and more towards automations with AI and stuff, everybody that's going to be running those tools is going to have to be thinking about the data. So like we have a custom e-com platform, so we own all of our own data. And when you've run a little bit over $500 million through a custom platform, you have a lot of data points. And so trends or what happens here, so, there's something that breaks in the chain, you can kind of see it, analyze it, and then hopefully forecast against it in the future, but best laid plans.
Yeah, so let's, you guys are hinting at various aspects of AI. Let's get into some of the AI specific questions. And I think that the folks that are at this conference, there's absolutely a range, right? There's some organizations that are all in and have enterprise licenses and I know ShipBob, the entire company has access to Claude, to Replit, to N8N, et cetera. And then I know that there's other organizations who are really kind of just starting, and so maybe they're using it from a efficiency workflow perspective. Maybe they're using it for copywriting or creative, but lighter use cases. And then of course there's folks in between. So I'd love to hear from you guys to understand where is AI genuinely impacting your teams? Is it marketing? Is it operations, forecasting, fulfillment? And so maybe you guys can share an example or two so the audience can learn from us.
The easiest thing to say is speed.
Yeah.
Right? That's really where it's helping us. We are a very small company on staff. We work with a lot of agencies. And so, most people at the company wear a lot of hats. But like in the last year, for example, like I said, I'm building this tool for our forecasting. I had to bring in developers for our own system because I can't write the code anymore like I used to 10 years ago. But now I am. So it's not that I'm writing the code for our e-com platform. It's like, instead of I want to add this feature, we'll build this as a standalone tool, which would have been crazy years ago. But now it's like, I can just do that at 2 o'clock in the morning when I wake up and the idea pops in my head and I just grab my phone and I talk about it. We're using Claude, we're using all the LLMs actually, and then we have our own custom internal one that actually uses most of the publicly available models as well as, I think we have OpenAI integrated into it as well. And it's trained on private data and private prompts and things like that. So that stays on our own servers though. Yeah.
That's great. Gregory, where are you guys at on your
AI journey? We love AI. Basically, I'm all in. The company loves AI. The owner, luckily, is very tech forward and loves data, so he's embraced it fully. His biggest complaint is having to pay for both Claude and ChatGPT, right? And the fact that everyone wants to use both, basically, and so like each have their own benefits, right? And then obviously there's Gemini and others, but yeah, really just trying to use it as much as possible. And so the biggest challenges come from it's new, and so how to get people to take on the challenge of figuring it out, right? And putting in data, obviously connecting the data, making sure that you are then reporting correctly. Obviously it's not always right. It does make mistakes, hallucinations, et cetera, but checking and verifying that what it's telling you is correct. We've definitely had some issues with people that are more novice with using AI that didn't verify what they were reporting, right? So you're reporting on the marketing success of the sale in front of the CEO and the leadership team, right? And you're telling us things that don't seem right? We were all watching the sale too, so we have ideas of what happened, right? But you're telling us this crazy story, and it's like, okay, well that wasn't it. So like, how did you get to the wrong answer, right? And so making sure people understand like verifying and really working with the data and making sure it's all correct prior to presenting in the meeting would be great. But it is super helpful. So we're really using AI across every possible means that we can. There are ads being generated with it, copy being helped along through brainstorming. We still do have human copywriters that are taking it and putting the finishing touches on it, but certainly data analysis. Basically everyone needs to become a data analyst at this point. And people that you're hiring should be data analysts essentially, or at least have that mindset at least to some degree. In almost every area of business, there's not one that, even a graphic designer really needs to be thinking in a data way too, which can be difficult because obviously creative people can be all the way on the creative side of the spectrum and not able to cross that divide over. But in a business and marketing, really you have to be able to kind of split a little bit of the brain, right? So having some ability to analyze the data, use the tools, understand what it's telling you basically, right? And then make your own decisions. But you have to be able to do that, or you're going to get left behind basically at this point. So it's a challenge because not everyone wants to embrace AI, obviously, and so it has become, it's a little bit headbutting occasionally with folks, but it's so easy, to just have a conversation. You don't have to write the perfect prompt or wait for some, magic to land. Like, it really is just a conversation. So, ask it questions, ask it what it thinks, see what it says.
It really is. Yeah, it really is an art and a science, and you're right. I love the ability to dance with it, even if it's just to advance my own thinking. I'm curious, so you mentioned verification. Of course, AI hallucinates. We need to, make sure that whatever it's giving us is accurate. Are there any areas where you or your businesses have decided not to use AI because either it's too precious of a part of your org, or you've had a bad experience, or you've just chosen not to prioritize AI in a specific area?
Yeah, so it's going to sound weird, but we don't use AI in a whole lot of marketing. So
tell me more.
Yeah, to play devil's advocate here, basically AI is kind of trained on everything, and so the definition of kind of everything ends up being mediocrity. Mm-hmm. And so for us, I'm blessed to work with some of the best copywriters in the world. Like they've been writing copy literally for 50 years. And the quality of what we get out of an AI tool on the marketing side typically does not meet muster for even what we would consider like a junior copywriter or junior creative on the team.
Because it's vanilla, right?
Yes. It's every once in a while a model will get released and it's like, oh, it kind of gets it, and then of course they'll neuter it or whatever. And so that's kind of a situation where we don't use it as much as probably a lot of companies are. And I think a lot of companies are probably more on the data analytical side. Yeah. And so for them, their marketing was probably below average, and it's been probably brought up to average, and that was a huge boost for their company. But for us, most of the stuff we've tested with AI, it's even though the speed is a lot faster and creative is our slowest thing we can do, it's not been worth it for us. But on the data coding side, things like that, of course, AI is, it's just speed to market is insane with it. And it's funny, you were joking about how creative people don't think the same. Back when we all used to be in an office, they would leave all the pizza boxes and beer for all the data guys to come in and clean up the next morning. So they tend to be night owls. Yeah.
I'd say similarly, we're using it up to a point, right? So, we're trying to incorporate AI as much as we possibly can in the business, but copywriting, finishing touches of things, right? So, brainstorming for copy, yes. Getting the sort of, here are the general concepts that we want to talk about. How can we incorporate those? Maybe even writing a little bit, but then coming back with the human part to really make sure that it doesn't sound, boring or generic, or, it can still be on brand and in the brand voice. So those are all sort of the elements I would say that do require humans. I don't think we're ever going to not have humans in the mix there. And so it really, you have to have a blend of it. So we're trying to incorporate AI as much as we possibly can in every part of the business, but there are limits, and definitely with the creative part, we still need the creative person to put the finishing touch on it at the end.
The other major area for health and wellness is chatbots and automated customer service replies, because you have compliance you have to deal with. You can't, talk about diseases. There's all this stuff. So it's like we still have a lot of humans in the loop on that side of the business, on the customer service. And of course that slows things down. It does cost more to do that. But I think it's our responsibility to make sure every message going out the door to a customer when they're asking a question is properly vetted, and it's not just an automated bot that sends them down a tangent.
Yeah, absolutely. This is fascinating. I know a lot of our beauty brands are here, and we've had similar conversations, and our beauty brands would say that creative and AI is the first use case they went to, because they want to A/B test, they need the speed to market, and so it's really been a great accelerant. So I think some of this
so we have a beauty brand as well,
yeah.
And for that one we actually do use a lot more AI in the creative, because that's more about the appearance, the images, those types of creative, whereas on the health side it's more about the copy and the actual messaging behind it. So it's kind of like that juxtaposition of image creative versus text creative. That's interesting.
Yeah. Let's get into maybe secret sauce playbook. We've got about 10 minutes left, and I want to make sure that we have a little bit of time for Q&A. So the question is, if you were launching your brands today, same product, same audience, but building the ops from scratch, what would you do differently in the first 12 months, or what would you want the audience to hear, lessons learned?
I would probably, if I was building it today with all the knowledge I have today, we probably would not be on an onerous back-end system like NetSuite or something complicated. There's just no need for it anymore.
Yeah.
So I don't, SaaS companies should be kind of scared because companies can basically build SaaS software overnight, and you could have a very simple financial tool tied to a bunch of custom systems that you build and probably operate your business better, faster, and cheaper. And so that'd be probably the first thing I would do is I would look at, okay, what is our tech stack gonna look like, and rebuild it completely from the ground up. Now as like a larger organization, it's a little bit harder to turn the ship in the ocean, so to speak, so yeah.
Yeah, you gotta unravel a lot. I know from a marketing perspective, even in the last 6 months, we've really had to kind of rethink, well, what does our marketing tech stack look like for ShipBob? Because we now are using, Claude to do social amplification for us, and so we don't need the insert tool name anymore. So it's really fascinating how that landscape is changing. How about you, Greg?
Yeah, I think the most important thing for me that I've sort of learned in the last year is thinking about the voice of the customer. Right, so in the olden days, you used to have to think about reviews, right, as like the core thing. Like you can read the reviews, you can get a sense of the product as a 3.5 or has a 4.2 or whatever, right? And then you can obviously read through those reviews and get a sense. But now with voice of the customer and what we're doing, we're able to take not just the review data, but the return data, the subscription cancellation reason data, and people love to write comments in all these places, right, which is great. We can take all of our customer service contact data from the 5 different ways people can contact us, right? And take all of that, plus the PDP and the landing pages and all the marketing materials up front, and compile that all together through AI into a voice of the customer document that really gives a holistic view from start to finish of what we said the product could do, whether it delivered on those promises or not, and what people said about it. And then be able to iterate and develop the product further in a much faster way, right? It would take months to go through one product and really do all of that research and review from all the different channels if you're really gonna do it, which is kind of overwhelming to even think about prior to being able to incorporate AI into that. You can just export all of these fields and soon be able to connect MCPs instead and pull it all together and be able to do it all and just output a beautiful PDF of all of the results and beautiful graphics and everything else that people can then take and actually do something with, which has been incredibly helpful. So I would say don't forget about all that customer data that they gave you in all those places and pull it all together. It's not just reviews, it really can come from all those other sources too. And make sure you're bringing it all together in a way that makes sense for you and can give you informed decisions then to take whatever missteps you might have been making that you didn't even know about. Maybe the product wasn't as aligned to the benefit that you were selling at the beginning. Was the outcome correct? Or did they experience whatever you were promising at the rate that you were promising it at, right? Did that actually come out to be true? And then how to evaluate and change the formula or create a new product that doesn't, goes in a different direction maybe, has been super interesting. So we've been doing that now with all the products and trying to figure out like what's working, what's not, and how to improve marketing as well as the formulas. So yeah.
I love that voice of the customer front and center. Most important thing we can do. I'm going to switch gears. I'm going to ask you each one more question, and then we'll see what the audience has to say. Marc, I know you're on the road a lot. I know you spend a lot of time at events. What is your don't miss? Could be AI-specific event or event of the year that you think is really important.
The number one AI event I go to, it's going to sound weird because it's not corporate-y, but it's kind of a bunch of what I would call marketing misfits, but they tend to be on the bleeding edge of what's available out there. So there's a lot of solopreneurs in the room. So like I'm one of the larger companies there when I go, but it's kind of like a tool dump for me, so I can know what to take back to the team, like what we're not even thinking about. And it was called AI Bot Summit, but I think it's called Growth Hacking Live now. I think Perry Belcher puts it on. They used to do traffic and conversion years and years and years ago. He was one of the partners in that. But that's one of the ones I always like to go to. And there's another one in Chicago that's a little bit more esoteric, a little bit more 30,000 foot. That's good.
What's the Chicago one? That's my hometown. I'm curious.
Perry Marshall puts it on. I think he wrote the original book on Google pay-per-click, like back in 2003.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
All right, I'll have to check it out.
Both friends, but you know,
Yeah.
they're good conferences. I'm sure. Is there anything else that?
No, I need to go to more conferences.
Yeah. All right, so you need to go to more conferences. Maybe you can close. What's your best AI hack that you'd share with the room?
I mean, really that voice of the customer one is it. I can't stress enough how important it is to pull all those data sources together. We've learned some amazing things that we were not thinking about before. And really the data is there for you to pull from. So bring it in, get some answers. Make sure it has all the data points, right? So from beginning of customer journey all the way to the end, that you're really thinking about all those steps and what people are saying along the journey and pulling it all together. And it's given us some amazing insights. So yeah, it's
great. It's great. Does the room have any questions for us? We have one right here in the front. She's got a box
Right
coming
here.
for you.
Check. You guys, with your supplements, are governed by DSHEA, the dietary supplement, all the regulations. Have you, in terms of using AI, downloaded those requirements and then your communication that you want to make to your potential customers or customers, dump that information in and say, hey, are we cool? And then have it generate any changes or suggestions. It just occurred to me.
I could probably talk a little bit about this. I spend a lot of time on phone calls with lawyers. But it's a spectrum, right? So it's interpretation of the law, basically. And when the Supplement Reform Act, I think it was 94, that's actually when we started selling supplements. Prior to that, it was a newsletter, and you can make claims in a newsletter. One of the things, it's structure function claims essentially is kind of how it breaks down. Internally for us, we've been doing it for so long that we don't necessarily rely on the tools for that. But externally with agencies and stuff like that, it is good to give them guidelines on like what is allowed, what's not allowed. But even then, I find that the LLMs are a little too cautious, and you can be the most compliant company in the poorhouse if you want. So yeah. That would be my advice on that.
Our lawyers are pretty compliant focused, so it is always very interesting to try and bridge the gap between the two, like how far can we push it? I mean, having great people that really understand compliance on the team is super important, of course. So, we definitely have taken the sort of guidelines, and I think, ChatGPT and Claude certainly understand what they are as well. So, incorporating all of that in. But, ultimately the people at the end of the day are the ones responsible for whatever the output is. So, making sure that everything is compliant is, of course, the most important thing when we're putting out marketing or emails or whatever it is, the chat, automated chat, where we're trying to automate as much as we possibly can. So, making sure we're reading the chats and understanding what it's talking about. If it's an AI-generated chat is super important, that it still has to be compliant just because it's automated. So, we're definitely human eyeballs on all those things, making sure we're keeping it up.
Yep. And it's a double-edged sword too, because you'll go out and you will have a compliant message, right, from a regulatory standpoint, and it might even be a strong message. But then some other company's most likely going to rip your message off and make it non-compliant, and it's going to sell better and most likely on an inferior product. So they're going to make all the money, and you're kind of left in the dust. So it's constant battle of where is the push and pull. We tend to avoid the problematic categories for products inside the health and wellness space, things like weight loss, sexual function, things like that. Those are categories that we tend to try and stay away from, just because they draw a lot more scrutiny.
Sure.
And so it's not that we don't have great products that actually help with that. We just don't market them. Those aren't the products we're bringing in new customers. We sell those more on the back end as customers discover our full catalog.
That's great.
Thank you.
Any other questions? We probably have time for one more. Oh, yeah. She doesn't want to throw it. Sorry.
It's dangerous.
So my question is that what is your opinion on the proprietary blend? How do companies gain advantage posting proprietary blends instead of elaborative contents on the product labels, because there is a disadvantage from the customer's point of view because they cannot exactly evaluate what's inside the supplement.
We do try and avoid it most of the time. So typically, if we're buying a proprietary blend or we're doing it ourselves, it's because it's either some kind of patent secret with the formula that we don't want to let out. And sometimes that's as simple as a flavoring system to make something taste good without adding sugar to it, which is very, very complicated to do in the space. Our greens drink, I actually have a couple bags if anybody wants to try it, tastes like Kool-Aid. And everybody sees me at conferences drink it. You'll probably see me after this. I have it already ready to go, mixing it, and people like visibly are like, he's chugging kale. And it's like, oh no, this is like, Kool-Aid. Mm-hmm. So we use a proprietary blend for that because we don't want people to know the exact amounts of all the different micro ingredients in there because it is very specific on the flavoring blend. But most of the time we try and avoid proprietary blends. Typically, companies use proprietary blends because they want to put a lot of a cheap ingredient in there and very little of the actual active that may actually make it efficacious. We don't do that. Everything in ours is studied doses. So even our number one selling product is a proprietary blend. It is technically an expired patent. You can go read the formula out there, and AI will definitely be able to do it for you. But we still don't release that information publicly just as a principle in the company because I would hate for a customer service rep to get it wrong and then get it out there.
Yeah. We try to avoid proprietary blends as much as possible. Mm-hmm. Our labels are pretty clean with just what the ingredients are. Yeah, and then the supplements generally just get less potent over time. Mm-hmm. They don't become dangerous. Suddenly turn evil after the expiration date. They just get less potent.
I am a fan though of standardized ingredients that are high quality. So we use a lot of those. In fact, one of our products we have, all 6 ingredients in it are trademarked, like standardized ingredients. Most companies will put 1 in, and then the rest of them will be generic versions of that. Our margins are terrible, on the products like that, but the product works, and there's a reason. On the flip side, we have had some standardized ingredients not pass muster. We've actually pulled it and put a generic version in, and customers reach out, and they're like, why did you make the switch? And we're like, our testing data doesn't back up what their marketing data says, and customers notice the difference when we swapped out.
Yeah, sure.